Hey y'all, grown black folks talk. 3 historical factors in black history that you don't want to take as a reason not to be a history maker. But first, let me do a shout out to a subscriber of mine who has noticed that I am using headphones with a mic attached. And this subscriber has actually not put names out there, gotten in contact with me and hooked me up with a wireless version. So we'll be doing a channel upgrade. I just have not had a chance to go through the instructions yet, but I will. And y'all will see this. To that subscriber, you know who you are. Public thank you. Okay, so I did the Sunday school version of this yesterday, in which the children of Israel, having come out of slavery, their whole generation marched up to the promised land that God had promised to give them. And what they were lacking was faith in God. Very simple lesson from a Christian perspective. And because God was right there with him and they told him to his face that he wasn't going to be able to do, he said, fine, your generation is going to tell me to my face that I can't do what I said I was going to do. I'm still going to keep my promise to your forefather Abraham. But guess what? Since you said I can't bring you in, you can be right. Your generation is going to perish in the wilderness. I'll bring your children in. How you doing, sir? That worries me from the perspective of seeing that we as Black Americans are living in arguably one of the most, if not the most prosperous countries on earth. And we are in the 21st century where if you're watching me, you can learn how to make money and start generating money online on the phone that I'm holding, that you're holding to watch this, or at the computer, the desktop. And we're coming up with reasons, which are actually factors why we can't succeed. So I did the Christian side of that yesterday, and I think I'm going to put that as the previous video for those interested. But today I want to do this in a generalized secular way. Conversations I have had and have seen in the past 6 months. You know, you sit down and you talk to people about what's possible for you as an individual and as a collective as Black people. And the first thing that people talk about is, but racism. Racism is a factor. It is alive and well. However, here's some Black history most of you don't know about. Ask yourself this question. When was the first historical Black college and university actually built? We're going to put on the Jeopardy theme in swing mode for you to think about it. In honor of Black History Month, Louis Armstrong, Ella Fitzgerald, and all the rest. We'll do a little Black history music. Do 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 ba do ba do ba do ba do ba ba do 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 ba do 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 ba do ba do ba do 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 ba ba do ba 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 bam bam. Okay, most of you probably thought after the Civil War in the 1860s and 70s. And that is true. Most of them were built at that time. But the correct answer is 1797. Cheney University in Pennsylvania. Cheney College in Pennsylvania. 1797. Now, the Black people that built that, they lived in a world where all you were as a Black person is, to the minds of everybody else in the country, you are a slave, an escaped slave, a manumitted slave, or you live in a state that had actually abolished slavery, like Pennsylvania a little bit earlier. But that's all you were. So racism was real. You could be kidnapped as a free Black person and taken down south to be a slave. Perhaps you've heard the movie 12 Years a Slave. So, and that also happened just before the Battle of Gettysburg. The Army of Northern Virginia captured some people that they felt had been unjustly manumitted. Robert E. Lee, the general, winked at it and then lost the Battle of Gettysburg and then lost the Civil War. That's a whole other side story we'll do another time. Point is, racism was more powerful then than it has been since. And still, Black people as a whole were able to work them, if they decided individually, I can't do this. Yes, it was a great risk for them to attempt to get out of slavery, but hey, some of them were doing it. So even then, an individual decided they wanted better could get it. And if they didn't get there, so many of them died trying. This is true. But the thing is, you live in a world where there's risk and there's reward. How much is your freedom worth to you to break out of the things that are holding you back? You don't have to escape by the North Star today. So while racism is definitely a factor, the fact that you are watching this means you have equal access to the 21st century economy. You may not have equal knowledge, and we'll come back to that later. Okay, so that leads to, if we don't get past that, then it's also very fashionable for very intelligent people to talk about. We can't do things to the mass because we have not received our reparations. We're never going to close the wealth gap between black people and white people until we get it. Okay, so both of these are both mass-based solutions. We are sitting up here saying that because the mass as a whole does not have the resources will be permitted to succeed, that means that every individual cannot either. Put a pin here. Because this means that the person who says that is identifying themselves with the collective. We haven't even gotten down to community level, but with the black collective, instead of understanding their freedom and their power as an individual. Put a pin there. We're getting closer to the actual reason as opposed to a factor. This is a factor. This is a factor. The value of slavery with inflation would be valued at between $16 and $20 trillion today. That's how much free labor our ancestors put in. And if you look at the number on the United States national debt, those numbers are not the same. But if the $20 trillion had been paid off to African Americans earlier, there would be no need for us to be in debt to China and to the big banks of Europe. But guess what? We're going to go back to Final Jeopardy. Let's say that the United States, Uncle Sam is sitting up here. And the question is about him. Final Jeopardy and the survival of the United States hangs in the balance. Do you think that the United States would rather pay China and Germany or pay the descendants of those who gave that $20 million worth of labor, but in the process acknowledge to the world with their money, if not their mouth, that we never were an exceptional nation? American exceptionalism, American freedom, that was never what it's cracked up to be. That's actually a lie for millions of people. And that's even before the Native Americans come up and talk about what about the value of our land. Well, what do you think? You think Uncle Sam is going to choose to keep paying China and Germany, or pay pay American descendants of the enslaved? Now, unlike the first question, if you understand the country you live in, you already know the answer. Ain't nowhere in the world the United States will pay China and Germany and sell off half its naked and hop before anybody ever admits that the American dream, American exceptionalism, American freedom is not what it's cracked up to be. So you're going to wait a very long time before that changes. Meanwhile, so you're going to wait for that to be repaired to the mass. You're going to wait a very long time. Okay, so now we're going to go from the mass level down to closer to home, the neighborhood level. Notice how the groups of people we're talking about are getting smaller. Well, every time we build something, they take it. Remember Black Wall Street? No, you don't remember it either. It's 2022. That was 1921. Now, this is not to say that attacks on the community level don't happen. I'm a victor in one that was in the 20-teens in what's left of the San Francisco black community. White supremacy had representatives telling us we could come in by the back door. Yeah, just 7 years ago. And guess what? The descendants of the United States colored troops are not all gone either. I told you I was a victor, right? I roll with victors. We beat that back. But definitely, as my pastor's wife always says, there are people always looking at what black people are building and say, you don't deserve to have that. Don't you know? All you are is a descendant of a slave, because it's still like it was in Cheney University. But here's the deal. Before you entertain that, you need to ask yourself, have you built anything worth taking yet? Are you doing anything worth burning down? For those of you who are of the African branch of religions, ancestor worship is involved. Can you imagine the magnitude of the insult to identify with your ancestors' failures as opposed to identifying with their success? But to think about the matter that way brings us to the heart of the matter. Everything I mentioned, racism, which is the overarching factor, the lack of resources because our ancestors were not paid and so couldn't pass that money down, and the fact that even to this day, if you do too much, certain people get jealous and try to take it from you because you're not supposed to have that. All those are factors. They are factors. Here's the reason. And now we're going to come down to the personal level. This is what's really going on. what you're saying sounds wonderful, but I have never been affirmed. And I have not been given access to the knowledge, nor do I feel I have the power to do what it is you say you can do. That's very hard to admit. It's hard to admit for a man than for a woman, because men rely so much. This is why you hear this from black men so often, but not black women. A woman who admits she's vulnerable and needy will be cared for by the women, because we're wired to do that as the caretakers of the children, and also by men who respond to the femininity and need and vulnerability and the submission to get the need met. A man who admits that in a country like this, especially a black man who's already a target, feels like he's going to become more of a target. So it's even harder to admit that. So although there's no excuse for excuse making, just understand, ladies, that there is something real going on there. It's easier for all of us to reach for factors. Now, I did this video for a reason. I'm beginning to show you things that I'm doing and that can be done or being done on a higher level by others that you can do. And I don't want any of you to sit back, and we're going to do more of that this month, and think, well, I will do that, but I want you to know what your own reason is. People have gone through a lot. I'm not saying your reason is wrong. I'm saying don't reach for a factor. Black History Month reminds us of a lot of factors why it's hard to succeed. But none of those factors stopped our elders and our ancestors, if you think about it, from doing some amazing things when they got over that internal thing that said they couldn't. Don't identify with the failures and the defeats in Black history. Learn to identify with what you need to do to grow and heal, and reach out and be what your successful ancestors did. Because again, if they didn't do this, you wouldn't be here. We wouldn't be having this conversation. Reach out for those success stories and recognize you can succeed. Get the therapy, get the healing you need so that you can become a powerful Black history maker. All right. I gotta make some more history. I'm in the middle of my exercise routine. I gotta head on back to the house and eat some collard greens and some collagen. And I'll see y'all later. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.